Welcome to The Real Deal with Empire. I'm your host, Ali Fawaz. And as always, this is the podcast where we don't just talk about transactions, we talk about transformation. And in today's episode, that word transformation is actually key. You may have noticed a trend popping up on social media lately where a lot of people are claiming themselves to be life or career coaches. And perhaps they don't have the experience backing them up to make that claim. And so then you'd be wondering, okay, are they actually qualified to advise people, right? Or to guide people and steer people? Well, today's guest is here and he's going to help us answer that question, right? I'm joined by John Gottchalk, who is a professional coach and consultant who works with individuals across various industries, helping them to develop their careers and also grow their business. So John and I go way back, full disclaimer. Both of us worked in digital marketing in the automotive space. And John was an SVP of dealer relations while I was heading up social media and reputation management. Now, after transitioning out of automotive, I began to consult in other industries such as real estate and others, where I found there was a lot of parallels between what I saw in the automotive space when it came to digital and social media and what was happening in real estate. It seemed like there was about a 10-year gap or 10 years behind where automotive is today. And so John is here and he's going to help us break down and talk about what really makes a good coach and a good consultant in the digital space and in the digital era and how professionals can actually stand out when we have a very crowded market, right? So without further ado, let's please welcome John Gottchalk. John, how are you?
Thank you. Thank you, Ali.
Glad to have you
again. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So why don't you, it's great to have you here, but for those who don't know who you are, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about, your past experience in the automotive space and I guess how you got to where you are today in consulting and coaching.
Great. Yeah, no problem. So I started my career in the automotive space in retail. Our family, my wife's family owned a Ford dealership in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we'd been married a couple years and I really didn't know anything about the car business. And one day they invited me to lunch and I had been on the road a lot I was a manufacturer's rep for a scale company.
Yeah.
And my in-laws said, hey, we think you'd be a really good finance manager and we want you to be home more and we're going to teach you the business and everything. I'm like, oh, okay, great. But I had no idea what a finance manager did. And they had a large operation, 100 employees. We were one of the largest Ford dealers in the region and always number one or in the top 15 out of 280 in a region. Ford back then had a lot of dealers. We had 20 dealers in a 20-mile radius within Pittsburgh. Some parallels to the real estate industry. There's a lot of realtors out there, right? And you have to stand apart. So I joined the family business and it was a great experience for me over 10 years, learning the business, the ins and outs. And you understand a family business there's a lot of dynamics with my brother-in-law, my father-in-law, and myself. I was the outlaw and 100 people. So when you're an outlaw and you're learning the business, I went to the dealer academy, you really get involved. You plug holes, if somebody's out that day. So you're in every part of it, from finance to the fixed operations department, the sales floor to the sales floor. And it could be varied every day. So over those 10 years, I learned a lot about the car business.
Yeah.
And so from my perspective, what dealers do day to day is amazing. And so I'm very engaged, obviously, with dealers with my business that I have today, and OEMs, the dealer, manufacturers themselves as well. Because from that point, that's where I really got into digital. And so you and I did some work with AutoNation on the program called Car Buy and AutoNation Direct, really trying to figure out how you sell cars directly to consumers online and maximize that opportunity in that perspective. So I ran a little team for about a year and a half. It was a pilot. We successfully launched that for them. They took it in-house to Fort Lauderdale. At that point, there was a company up in Michigan called Ford Direct here in Detroit. They are a joint venture with Ford Motor Company. And I was a little familiar with them. And I went on board with them to run their dealer advertising funds around the country. And from that point, I interacted with many people at the OEM, with their advertising agency, and the 3,800 dealers or so back then around the country. So my ability to take digital dealers were getting engaged in digital, paid search, social, video, whatever it might be. So I really learned a lot, and also would help them, maximize their opportunities in that space. From that point, I rose to be the senior vice president, as you said, of dealer relations, and that was a great experience working with dealers all over the country, helping them understand the value proposition of Ford Direct, where we fit in that whole ecosystem with the marketing and Ford Motor Company. I moved on at that point to a company called LotLinks. It was really my first foray into artificial intelligence, leveraging artificial intelligence to identify consumers online and present vehicles that dealers had on their lots to those customers looking for those vehicles. Managed all of the reseller networks, so all the salespeople out there selling our product and service, as well as the agency partners, so all those advertising agencies that work with dealers around the country. And then from that point, I went on to be the chief revenue officer for a company called Overseas Military Sales Group, better known for Military Auto Source and International Auto Source. They are the largest retailer of U.S. spec automobiles to the military outside of the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, and they really didn't even know anything about it till stumbled upon the opportunity.
Yeah.
And it was just a really great experience understanding international sales forces, global sales force, working with the military and multiple manufacturers. So I had an opportunity to work with Stellantis, VW, Audi, Ford, with Toyota, Honda. So multiple manufacturers. Subaru, I worked with Subaru, brought them into the program, Hyundai. So it was a great experience for me. Took a company that was struggling at that time, losing money, actually, millions of dollars. Wow. And then within 3 years, working with the leadership team, we turned it around and made it into the black and well into the black, making millions of dollars.
That must feel good.
It really felt really good.
Yeah.
And so I accomplished quite a bit. And so there were some dynamics that happened. And so I, over 25 years, I acquired a lot of knowledge and helped a lot of sales teams growth. Ford Direct, we went from 33 employees when I joined over like 250 by the time I left or so.
I want to say I was person 65.
Yeah. So see, we had a dynamic change. I think you came on board in 2012, you said.
Yeah, that's right.
I started in 2008. So we had that growth and trajectory. We were nearly a $500 million company when I left. Yeah. So really amazing. At that point, when I left overseas military, I was kind of in a position where I'm thinking, I've been working with people all my whole career.
Yeah.
I've always felt myself as a developer of people. And really that's my mark. That's what I was. I was a sales guy.
Yeah.
And building sales teams and leading salespeople. So I felt like the natural place for me was coaching, mentoring, consulting, training. And when we talk about coaching, there's some things that we'll, kind of cover probably this, but I really felt that I had a calling for that.
That's actually right. Perfect timing. And that was kind of,
so that's how I got into this. Yeah.
What inspired you? And it sounds like it's all of that experience culminated into, well, this is kind of what my niche is.
Yeah.
What I enjoy doing.
It energizes me. Working with people energizes me. And so I've had that experiences. I think we'll talk some about that, what makes a good coach.
Right.
And then I've had training. I am a disciple of John C. Maxwell. He's a leading trainer and writer and talks a lot about influence of people, multiple books, billions of copies sold around the world, multiple languages. And so I've always watched what he's done. I've read a lot. Obviously, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, everyone. I'm just a consumer of personal growth.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important component as well. So I want to share that. And so I was certified by John C. Maxwell. I took the courses and you put in the time and the effort and you now have certification. I'm not a doctor by any means, but I have a piece of paper that says I've been through the course, right?
Yeah,
and I feel those, along with my experience, I can lend to somebody to help them grow.
I love that. I really do. Those are the kind of things I think when you're driven by inspiration and past experience that drives you in. I think you just need time. You need to have that career band behind you to really be able to get to a position in your career where you feel like this is really what my career has culminated to. These are my expertise. This is the value that I can bring to the table to others, to myself, and to organizations.
Yeah.
Now, when we were in the automotive marketing space, right, we saw a lot of companies, especially on the tier 3 automotive side, which is the retail automotive side of things, trying to jump onto digital trends, if you will, right? And I call them trends because social media was just popping off in terms of monetizing it, and how do you drive leads and drive business and opportunity, and of course reputation was tied to all of this, right?
Yeah.
How do you engage with an audience there? What if the audience was upset with you and they're telling their friends using social platforms that can spiral and go viral, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of concerns there, but how do audiences, or not audience, but how do you optimize strategies for all that, right? And that became the next question is, okay, let's take this from the Wild West to how do we optimize this?
Right. Really kind of legitimize what we're doing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that in pretty much everything, there's always this leap to the shiny object.
Yep.
Right. And at that point, when we were back in our careers, we were, paid search, the social, the video, everything. It's that shiny object. A lot of times, not only, with dealers, but other companies and other verticals, they hop in with really out any real strategy or why am I in this, right? It's kind of like check the box.
Yep.
Because I'm supposed to be.
Because I'm supposed to be here. And now we're seeing a lot of that transpire in real estate.
Sure.
Right. So there's similar things where we're finding that a lot of people just feel like, well, I need to be here. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to jump on and they're, getting on social and they're talking about themselves, but there isn't necessarily a real strategy behind it. There isn't, what's the value you're bringing to your audience? How do you plan accordingly and strategize around these kind of things, right?
Well, I think that, first off, you have to have, the customer first and foremost, always in your mind before you do anything. Like, how is my customer going to benefit from me being there?
And that's why we're doing everything we're doing. Right?
How are they consuming content? Are they really consuming this? And how are they? Right. And does that customer, my customer, is that who I'm talking to? Yeah. And then you have to have intent. Like, what's my intention to be there? And then build a strategy around it. And then the consistency of that strategy, and then measuring your strategy to make sure it's exactly why you got into it. And is it really fulfilling what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And so you should basically, before you buy anything, you learn over time, and my 25 years of experiences, just wait. Like, you're almost like, you don't have to be the leader in that space or buying.
You could be the fast follower.
Right? Have those people make the mistakes.
Yeah.
And then you can take that playbook and start implementing that playbook.
Yeah.
And that would be my advice for most people is just slow down a little bit and then find out what works for your customer first. Where are they at? And then how am I going to address them?
Yeah. So a big issue that I've noticed is that anyone can call themselves an expert in marketing or even as a life coach.
Yeah.
Right. And so what do you think actually makes someone truly qualified to be a coach?
From my perspective, a coach not only is the person that's helping you break down barriers, but it comes from experience.
Yeah.
And, so I've been in business 25 years. I've seen a lot. I've experienced, I've built teams. I've helped build strategies. I've been involved in those hard conversations.
Yeah.
So through those types of experiences I've had over time, you build what I call wisdom. Somewhat.
Have you coined that term?
I don't think I can coin that.
Okay.
But those experiences help lead me in my training to say that I have somewhat of that knowledge base that I can help Ali in a certain manner. And I try to stay within my own lane a little bit. Yeah. So think about sales. I kind of feel like I've been around sales for a long time. So I can help a sales guy, no matter if they're in real estate or automotive or some other vertical. There's a lot of synergies there.
Right.
Marketing. that's been a core of my business for 25 years. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of what's going on in the marketplace and marketing, how to do that. I can work with people on that, and just life in general. But I try to stay within that as my core. And I think as you look for people to be coaches, think about them, where it's coming from. Yeah. What's their background? What's their experience? Who have they helped?
Yeah.
What are those types of things?
I think that answers the question of, well, how do you know if somebody's really qualified to guide you and to coach you? Right. So those are the kind of things you're saying.
Right.
Look at their background.
Yeah, I think it's like
do your research.
It's like anything. Homework. I mean, you can learn a lot from a book.
Yeah.
And there can be that playbook.
Yeah.
But that's a one size fits all. Right. And it's cookie cutter. And most people aren't cookie cutter. We're all individuals. Yeah. We all have different customs. We have different backgrounds we've come from. We have different values. Yeah. We have different challenges. We have our own challenges internally.
Yeah.
And our weaknesses and strengths. So I think it takes somebody that's been around a while to understand and recognize those types of things. And I would say that, from a person looking for a coach, a lot of times you have to do a little bit of digging. It's okay to talk to somebody. Yeah. I think it's like, for me, I have an introductory call with my clients.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I want them to know, am I the right coach for them? Mm-hmm. Do I have similar values that they have? Do I ask the right questions that are challenging the customer, the client, right?
Right.
And do I understand their market?
Yeah.
Do I understand where they're coming from? And so I think from when you're looking for a coach, that introduction is pretty valuable.
Yeah.
It's well spent time, and it should be free.
So how do you tailor your coaching? Because I don't think it's not a one size fits all.
It's not. It is not a one size fits all, for sure.
So I guess, how do you tailor that then?
Yeah. So to your point, it's what we talk about is everybody's a little different. Be it if I'm doing coaching with a person or consulting with a company, their cultures are different, their values, what they're trying to accomplish, where they're coming from today, what are the goals they're trying to achieve. They're all different. And so the first thing that you really want to do is make sure you're listening. Mm-hmm. And asking the right questions. And that's where you gain that knowledge from your client. And then from that point, you build a strategy around those particular needs within that. And so there are don't get me wrong, there's core playbooks.
Right.
That everybody should follow, right? Yeah. I mean, when you think about sales, like how many calls you're making, consistency, all the different things that you should be doing every day on a daily basis. But there's always nuances around that are different. And I think that's what's most important is first listening. The coach always should be 80% of the time listening.
Yeah, I think to that point, it's like, sure, you know what you should be doing, but what's motivating you to make sure you do that? So you have to understand, I suppose, what's this individual motivated by, right?
Right.
Or as I say, what's your why? Why are you doing what you do?
Right.
What will inspire you? Because you can't lead everybody in the same way, right? What inspires Joe isn't the same that inspires John.
Correct.
And so I think that's where the tailoring maybe comes in play.
Yeah, I think, and when I look at when I'm coaching an individual that's trying to accomplish goals or objectives in their life, understanding, what is that is aligned with their values and their true passion of why they're trying to achieve a certain goal. And where they're going. I think what I like about coaching is, keep it open-ended. Your goals are always kind of changing. You reach goals all the time.
Right.
What are your big goals? What are you really trying to do? And if it's a life thing, but almost sometimes start at the end and work your way backwards.
Where do you want to get to?
Because sometimes when you're making your goal, it seems almost unattainable because it's so far out there.
Yeah.
Think about what's the steps that we're going to take to get there, and those micro steps, and celebrating the micro steps.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the interesting part about a coach is how do you help them break down those little goals and objectives? What are the obstacles? Those types of things.
Yeah. So social media is a huge part of personal branding, especially in real estate.
Yeah. Right.
And you see agents all the time posting on social channels.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah. I'm not looking for a house today, but I do see them up there, the billboards and the different things.
They're everywhere,
They're
right?
everywhere, right?
And I think that's where the message sometimes gets lost, right? What's the message? What are you trying to convey? Are you just conveying that, hey, look how much I've sold. Look how much I've done. Look what I did.
$1 billion producer, $1 million producer, whatever that might be. And it's noise.
Okay.
Right. How do you really take, I see a lot of realtors that are, it's packaged. It's really pretty stuff. It looks good, but what's the substance?
Yeah.
What's behind that person? And I think that the challenge that I see with social media, especially when you're an individual entrepreneur, which the real estate agent really is, how do you break that down? How do you become not a part of the noise? And I think, it's people doing business with people. It's being authentic.
Yes.
It's being you. Yeah. You're going to make mistakes. You're not perfect. So I think when you see these packaged things and you got this person that's so perfect, they look great, the lighting's great. It's like, come on. I think you got to be authentic. People are looking for people they can trust. Do they feel like you've been through some wars? Have you sold a few houses, had houses go south on you, the inspections went bad, couldn't get a mortgage, all those different things. And I think that's where a realtor can differentiate themselves, because then it becomes about education.
Yeah.
It becomes about some entertaining a little bit, right? And also, consistency. Have you been there? This is the first time I've ever seen this guy? So you can start educating. Yeah. And I think we can talk about some of those things about it. I mean, I've got some ideas in my head. If I was a realtor, let's start with thinking about your customer. What are their challenges? And then I'm the expert. Let's talk about those to educate people and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? I think far too often we see, and this even happens in sales in general, but we see people want to jump right to the close. I want to close you. But I don't know who you are yet. Yeah. Right? You're asking for the sale, but I don't know you yet.
Yeah.
You haven't introduced yourself. You haven't created awareness of who you are.
Yeah.
Ease me into it, right? Let me just introduce me who you are. And eventually, after I've seen you enough times and you've conveyed a message where maybe you've incorporated a value proposition. So now I understand what sets you apart from other agents, right?
Yeah. It's
a courtship, really.
And really that's, I think about that. And it has some correlation to when I was selling cars.
Yeah.
Back with my in-laws. And obviously I definitely had an advantage if I was an in-law, right? Because I had a direct connection with the big guy.
Yep.
My father-in-law was up the hallway, right? So, he's the end guy making the decision. So I had a lot of things I was doing at the dealership. I had multiple things doing. So if I had to take it up on a customer, when it's a busy Saturday and I'm there and there's no salespeople left, there's somebody walking on the lot. My father was like, there's somebody, you got to go take them. Yeah. So I'd go take them. And I sold cars not on like what the technology in the car was, the specs, whatever. I was really about just people.
Yeah.
And it was more, and that's why sometimes they're more just building a relationship. So Ollie walks on the lot. It was more about, back in that day, it was like 1990. I have a hard time on still 19s. 1998, 99, the internet's just getting going. And people are every year on the news is everybody's buying, cars online now.
Right.
Nobody was buying cars online.
No.
But you were hearing that was going to take over. And so how I would greet Ali is I'm like, I bet you've been doing a lot of research online, haven't you, Ali? And you know what Ali would say? I haven't, because Ali's not going to say he isn't, right? Because he hears it in the news and all these. And then it'll be just like, I bet you know more about these cars than I do. I'm Mr. McCracken's son-in-law, and we're real busy today. You see people walking around. I'm busy. You're busy. Let's keep this thing simple. Really, you know exactly what you're looking for. Let's just find the right car, the right color, take it for a ride. I'll make the numbers work for you. I'm Mr. McCracken's son-in-law. Believe me, we don't have to go back and forth. And they're like, but that's who I am. I'm like, I don't really know what all these specifications, I don't have time to learn all the specifications.
Yeah.
I did take some of the tests from Ford because they make you take all those. But if you're not doing it every day, you don't know exactly what's going on. It was more personality and and build a relationship. So, and trust, hey, I'm here. So if something goes wrong, who are you going to come see?
Yeah.
You're going to see me because I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to crack the son-in-law. So it's that trust. Like, if they make a phone call,
that trust?
are you going to be there? Right? If my house and it's under contract and something goes wrong with the inspection, can I trust that Ali's going to help me fix this issue?
Yeah.
With the inspection report. So when you're talking in social, it should be honest about stuff. Yeah. Hey, we've had these obstacles, and I hop right in and I get involved. And maybe you tell stories about a success of a new home buyer that was challenged, and we found ways to get around it, and they were so happy. And now they have a nice new home and first-time home buyer. They've always been renters. Yeah.
You're essentially interviewing for the job.
Exactly. You're interviewing for everybody that sees you online, and you have to be authentic and trustworthy because it's a huge purchase, and cars are huge purchases.
Yeah.
And so both, there's a lot of parallel there. And if you're a salesperson in a dealership, I've always thought that I was more valuable as a salesperson selling cars outside of the dealership, at the bowling alley, at church, at all these places, building relationships to say, hey, if you're looking for a car, come see me. If you're looking for a house, come see me.
Right.
Here, it almost didn't matter what the name of the real estate office is.
Yeah.
That's just where I go and work at a desk.
Yeah. You're the face of.
You're the face.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the same thing, when I left the car business, I still had people calling me to ask, where should I go buy a car? And I would make recommendations, and I would actually meet people at dealerships in Pittsburgh with the salespeople or the dealership that I recommended them to, because I felt engaged with that person, and they appreciate that.
Yeah, they definitely.
It goes a long way. Yeah.
When it comes to personal and career growth, what are the most common mistakes you see people fall into?
Yeah, because
there's pitfalls.
I have.
Yeah.
Right? Over 25 years, I've had some of those pitfalls.
We all make mistakes.
Right? I can think back on certain decisions I've made, and I'm like, man, why did I make that decision? But you know what? It led me to today.
Yeah.
And I think one thing in particular is, looking for permission for different things, looking for permission to grow. I think don't be afraid to ask people where are my weaknesses.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to seek growth. And you don't need permission to seek growth. I think as an individual, your ability to grow as a person within an industry or personally, you should constantly be growing.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be going backwards.
Right.
And you're not going to expand your opportunities. You're going to be stuck in the mud.
Right.
So think about that. I think the other thing is thinking that you're progressing because you're busy.
You can just be busy doing busy work.
Confusing busyness for progress. And so understanding clarity of what am I really trying to accomplish? What are my real goals? And using your energy wisely. So what I would recommend to folks at home or listening to this podcast is one trick that I have is, and I've learned this, is every evening or every day before you leave work, take just a moment and say, what have I done well today? What haven't I done well? What could I do differently? And I think if you do that every day, and I posted this recently, if you do that every day for 7 days straight, you really can affect change to be working on the right stuff and doing the right things.
Yeah.
And think about doing that every day. Analyzing what you've done. Because what you're going to start doing is you're going to start aligning with what's really important.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. The other thing is really self-acquisition or knowing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I really liked about what we did at Ford Direct, and you were part of probably a lot of it, is Wonderlicks, DISC, understanding what are your strengths, where are my weaknesses, what are my blind spots, and being open to those things.
So for someone who's thinking about transitioning into coaching themselves,
sure,
whether it's in real estate or frankly any other field, what advice would you give to them to help them to build a strong foundation for long-term success in coaching?
Well, first and foremost, I would just applaud them for wanting to do that. And the first thing I would ask is it for self-serving reasons, or is it for what it is really intended to be, is helping people? and building better people and helping them be successful. So analyze that first. Be true to yourself. Are you just doing it just for yourself, or are you doing it because you want to help people? And then secondly, start building a resume of experiences. Not only experiences within the industry that you're working, but looking outside of the box and doing some other different things, but also in educating yourself. To be a really good coach, you have to continually educate yourself. I think one of the things my mentor or coach, John C. Maxwell, has the law of the lid. So it's 21 infutable laws of leadership.
Okay.
One of them is the law of the lid. So you can only help people attain levels that you are at. So if you reach that lid of learning as a coach, then you can only help people get to that level. So as a coach, you need to continually be learning. And so, I applaud people for wanting to get into that and helping people. But I think you continually learn. So I'm continually looking at things. I'm continually listening to speakers. I'm continually reading about, going back and reviewing. Even when I did my certification, I've gone back and started relearning and listening to, examples or listening to other coaching sessions to understand that coach and how they approach speaking with that client. So, I would applaud them to continue to learn and be sincere about why you're getting involved in coaching.
I like that. Yeah. I think that's great advice because we're not trying to discourage anybody from getting into it.
No, not at all.
I think it's more so let's make sure we're doing it the right way. And you're, like you said, are you doing it for the right reasons?
Right.
And are you truly helping somebody? And how do you get there? And so as long as there's a path for somebody, I think they should try to find that path for them.
Yeah, no, I think it's outstanding. I think the more people we have that are thinking about other people in our society and helping other people is only going to make a better world.
Yeah, love it.
Right?
We're here to solve the world's problems.
Exactly, one person at a time. But I think it's outstanding that somebody would want to be involved in coaching, and I think it's great.
Nice. So we're going to transition a little bit into a new segment that I call Real or Ridiculous.
Ooh, fun.
So I'm going to fire off some questions for you, and then you're going to tell me whether you think it's real or ridiculous.
Okay.
Simple as that.
All right.
So first one. Anyone with a decent following on Instagram can be considered a social media expert.
I would say that's ridiculous. Just because you have a lot of followers doesn't mean that you're an expert or understand strategy or the whys and ins and outs. It might have just been you're just lucky to getting a lot of followers. It doesn't mean you're making real difference with people. And how are they driving? Is it driving your phone calls? Right. Is it driving the objectives of why you're even there? Right.
Are you measuring it? Is it actually meeting your goals and your objectives, like you said? Or did you just stumble across it because something funny happened and it went viral and suddenly you had a bunch of followers?
Yeah, I think I've got 7,000 followers on LinkedIn that I built over 15 years probably, ever since LinkedIn really got going. And it's more about the content that I share on LinkedIn. And I'll go to these different events and people will be like, I feel like I know you. And I don't even know them, but they've been following my content and they've seen what I posted. It's really, again, we'll go back to what we talked about earlier about, educating, entertaining, because I sometimes feel like I'm kind of an entertainer and the impact that you've made in that. So, I'd say it's ridiculous just to have a lot of
I would agree.
And call yourself an expert.
Yeah. Next question. Every real estate agent should have a life coach in order to be successful.
I would say ridiculous to that.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to have a life coach.
Sure.
In real estate, I think you have to have the right mentors. You have to have the right educators, people that have been through the real estate mill for years and learn from them. I think that's most important, that you need to understand a position where maybe you do need a coach that's going to help you in certain ways, because a coach is really about where you're at today and where you want to go. And what are the obstacles and the options to overcome what you need to achieve, and how are you going to put it into action. So, a coach, we talked about this one size fits all formula earlier. When you think about, you're my client, I think about what are the things you're trying to accomplish? What are the obstacles that you currently are facing? What are some options that you can have to overcome those? And then how are we going to put it into action? And as a coach, you are relying on you, the person being coached, to be successful. The coach is someone that's helping you as the client solve your own problems.
Right.
Because in the end, you'll only be successful because Ali wanted to solve that problem and achieve that goal, because I can't motivate you. Right?
Yeah.
I think you learn early on in sales leadership that there's only so much motivation you can do. It's got to come from inside Ali to obtain the goal.
That makes sense. All right. Question number 3. You can create a successful coaching business without any formal training or certification.
I'm going to surprise you, I think, on this. I think I'm going to say real.
Yeah.
Because you can, if you have the experience, if you have the wisdom that you've built up over time, you don't really need to have a certification.
Sure.
Although it does, I think, help.
Sure.
I think it
But
does.
it's not a need.
Being a part of the John C. Maxwell team is very important, I feel, because it's a well-known group. Yep. There's a lot of people in that group that are really smart that I learned from. But I think you could still be a successful coach without having a certification.
Fair. I like that answer.
Mm-hmm.
Question 4. Building your brand on social media is more important than actually closing deals.
I would say that's very ridiculous.
I would definitely agree.
Right? I mean, if you're not closing deals, then it's not going to matter how many followers you have.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I think that was cut and dry.
Yeah, that's pretty easy.
Yeah. All right. Last question for you.
Okay.
Anyone can be an effective mentor if they've had a few years of experience in an industry. So this one maybe is a little similar to the previous.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty close. I would say it's hard to say ridiculous, but I'm going to say ridiculous because I don't think you've had enough time in that particular role to really be effective in mentoring, because a mentor is a little different than a coach. A mentor is somebody that's going to allow their experiences to influence Ali. And a coach is somebody that's helping Ali get through the obstacles on his own. The mentor is influencing through his experiences or her experience to that client or that person. So I would say to be an effective mentor, how you asked the question, is more ridiculous because they haven't had enough time.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction between the mentor and the coach.
Yeah.
Because they are truly two different things, which sometimes I think can get blurred.
Right. And it's okay if you're a coach to sometimes talk about experiences, because that's obviously the reason you come to me as a coach in the sales field or in the marketing field is I've been there, I've done that.
Yeah.
But that's not the reason that you want to have it. You are trying to grow and expand your knowledge. To just take what I've done and accomplished is only tooting my own horn.
Yeah.
And that's not why you came to be the coach. Right. Now, if you want to have a mentorship and we have worked together and we're working, you come to me for ideas and things, that's okay. That's a different path.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, John, thank you so much for your insights today. Really, it's been a great conversation. It's been very eye-opening and really helping people kind of guide them down this path, the right path of how do you go, explore coaching or mentoring or even consulting, right? And so really appreciate you coming out. Really appreciate your knowledge, your insights, and we hope you can come back to see us again.
Love to. Thanks.
Where can people, if they want to find you, do you have a website or anything like that?
Yeah, they could, at John Gottchalk is my Twitter handle. It's John, John, and Gottchalk, Gottschalk. And then on LinkedIn, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, send me an invitation and follow me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of just different things that I think are very helpful. Again, education, entertaining. Probably more on LinkedIn is more educational. My Twitter's a little bit more entertaining, I guess, because I think it's a different path and a different platform. And we didn't really get into different things on different platforms so much, but and John C. Maxwell is you can get through my LinkedIn to my website. It just talks about my speaking engagements, coaching, training, and consulting that I do. But yeah, feel free to contact me if you'd like and stay connected.
Heard it here. Yeah, definitely check them out. I encourage you guys, and thank you guys for listening to another episode of The Real Deal with Empire. Until next time, please make sure to remember you can follow us. You can listen to us on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. Make sure to leave us a review and follow us. Till next time. Thank you, guys.